All right, here's my thought on the Phillies. Now that I slept on this a little bit, Saturday, because it got so lost in the sauce with football over the weekend, I think it deserves more attention. This Klentak nonsense, this Middleton nonsense is what it is. Middleton says the fans had nothing to do with the Klentak decision. All right? This is bogus. Klentak has a contract. His assistant, Ned Rice, takes over. Klentak is still there. McPhail is still there. The optics are to demote Klentak to calm the fans down. But the structure remains the same. That's how I feel right now. You in on that?
I have so many emotions towards this Phillies organization right now, and they're all so negative. So, yes, I agree with what you're saying, along with 5 billion other problems from Matt Klentak and John Middleton.
Frank Klose covers the Phillies for 97.3 ESPN.com. And Frank, Middleton said that the fans had nothing to do with it. No impact at all. He understands the fans, but they did not make an impact here. I call baloney on this.
I don't necessarily. I think this was a move that was so obvious that needed to be made. I think that, after 5 years of essentially having the keys and being able to rebuild this franchise, and this was a long 5 years. And actually, these are the 5 years I've been on 97.3 ESPN covering the Phillies. I walked in the first camp to watch David Lowe and Cedric Hunter start in the outfield. So, they really tore it down, and it never came back up completely. So they need another set of eyes desperately. I think the fans, of course, did indeed want Klentak out of town, but at the end of the day, this is a results-oriented business, and the Phillies just didn't produce.
All right, I can understand your point there a little bit, but he basically reassigned him. Now, the interim guy is Ned Rice, who was his assistant, and Andy McPhail is still here. I mean, what's to suggest that they just didn't optically say, look, we got to demote you, but you're still going to have because what other role is he going to have where anybody's going to take him seriously?
That's a really good question. I don't know what they have planned for him. I mean, this could be a situation where maybe Klentak knows that there's probably not going to be another job available just yet. We're, of course, still in the middle of a pandemic, and life is not returning to normal for a lot of people. But, maybe it's as he earns the rest of his money, because let's face it, he has to be paid on the contract he has. Maybe he feels it's better for his career to remain with the organization than it is to just be out there with nobody. So while he looks for his next long-term option. So it's perhaps a way to make sure that Klentak is doing something for his salary these couple of years when money will be tight, and maybe he can fill a role that is not currently open but will be at some point. I don't know what that will be, but maybe they think he's a nice guy and they want to help him in his next endeavor.
Yeah, maybe it's Waterboy. Hopefully that's what it is. Now, you mentioned the next long-term solution, and he brought up that because of COVID, it might take some time, and Ned Rice might be here for, who knows, maybe a year. That bothers me. Like, you need to go out and get your guy, and it seems pretty simple. It's not rocket science. There's plenty of teams out there that have nowhere even close to the amount of money being able to be spent than the Phillies. Go find out somebody in the Tampa Bay Rays organization or the Oakland A's. Go find a team that has success every single year that doesn't spend nearly the same amount of money and pick up someone from that organization. Like, you can use the phone. You can use Zoom. I know COVID is something that can stop in-face conversations, but it should not stop John Middleton from getting someone sooner rather than later.
The only reason why it might get in the way, I don't know, and Josh and I were talking on the phone before I came on. Do they have their sights set on somebody else long-term down the line that's going to be available later? That could be a question. But, I think this season coming up is going to be a transition season for a lot of teams. I keep seeing already reports from various teams. Well, we're going to cut the payroll next year, going to cut the payroll next year, going to cut the payroll next year, going to cut the payroll next year. So this 2021 season is going to be a total crapshoot. We saw that the Eagles might be allowed to have 10% of the fans in soon, but there's no real clear path forward for revenues, and I think this is going to be a very curious offseason because Teams are simply just not going to know what to do, and they're going to cut, and they're going to cut, and they're going to cut. The Rangers, I believe, are planning to cut their payroll $50 million. I think that's the number I read. So maybe they just don't want to commit long term in the middle of this chaos, and maybe in the middle of this chaos, some opportunities present themselves, and the Phillies want to be in that position to jump on any opportunity that might just happen to fall in their lap.
Well, if that's the case, I mean, okay, they're going to cut here. How does this team take that next step? And I got to imagine that you are on a balancing act now of ticking off Bryce Harper. I mean, he's wearing the Real Muto jersey everywhere he's going right now. I mean, it looks like they have a fine line here between, hey, this is not what I signed up for from Bryce Harper, and improving this team. How do you do it?
That's a really, really good question, and I think this is where the Phillies can invoke some of that financial strength. The Phillies are going to be better off than some teams. I think that's very fair to say. But when you look at the great picture of things, in 2009, the average team payroll sunk, and the reason why it sunk is they were in the middle of a recession. The expectation is probably next year the average payroll across MLB is going to sink. And how much does it sink? And does that mean, I think the big name players are still going to get a lot of money. I'm still predicting 7 years and $185 million for JT Realmuto wherever he goes. They'll pay for the big players. I think the way to maximize your team is perhaps to say, okay, if the big guys are going to make all this money, and a lot of teams will be saying, all right, well, instead of going for the mid-range guy, I'm just going to try one of my rookies. Maybe you get some bargains in the middle. Like, I think that's what the Phillies might have to do. They can outbid the teams in the middle level. Maybe the Mike Miners and Robbie Rays of the world that we've been talking about for years that the Phillies might be interested in. They're not going to get the big payday. But, so maybe teams are going to pass on those guys, and the Phillies need to swoop in. So it's going to be a very curious offseason. In fact, think about even like a Jake Arrieta, who probably won't resign no matter what. How much is he going to get? A guy like him, So I think that there's going to be a lot of an emphasis on a lot of young players next year, and some of the veterans that are pretty good but not over the top. They're going to get some what would otherwise be called below market deals, and the team that's able to strategically sign those players, or as many of them as possible.
How do you go back down the road again of signing a mid-level or lower-level relief pitcher? I mean, you tried that already, and it blew up in your face. Like, don't you? Again, believe me, I know that spending money on bullpen help is not the way you do it, but where else are you going to improve this team outside of getting a guy who's better than Nola? Like if you said, hey, we went out and got Trevor Bauer and we added mid-level guys in the bullpen. All right, but where else are you going to make this team better if you don't go out and get bullpen help and get guys who are better than you're saying Robbie Ray, who had an awful year this year? Yes, I know he had some good years in the past, but what kind of optics is that?
Yeah, I think the Phillies are going to have to try to also use their financial strength in trades. A team like the Rangers that's going to have to cut payroll, they're not going to be the only one. We're just hearing about them right now, front and center. I think that the Phillies should swoop in and try to take some of these contracts off of people. It's funny because for years it was like, okay, the Phillies have all this payroll room; they could take on the bad contracts. I think now the teams that need to unload the money will have to unload good players. And, the Phillies might be in a position to take some of them. I mean, the Phillies do have a good amount of money coming off the books. When you consider, Arrieta, Realmuto, Robertson, those are the big ones. Didi Gregorius, if he doesn't re-sign. You can non-tender the likes of Vince Velasquez. So they have, I mean, it's really not a lot. If you say they have 40 to 50 million to work with, if they keep the same payroll level as last year. So they just have to be really smart about this. I think and I guess that question is harder to answer when you don't know who is in charge of the team.
I'm not against getting some middle guys and all of that nature. Like, you do need that.
Well, they have to.
Right. Well, you need that stuff. But it goes back to one of the things that John Middleton said is for 100 years, this organization has had a problem with drafting and developing. You can live with giving up, even though it crushes me to say this, but let's say you're the Braves and you have the Braves system or the White Sox system, right? Or the Padres. You can live with giving up a Sixto Sanchez for a JT Realmuto because you have other people actually coming up. It is a disaster. You can't succeed by just buying an entire team and buying your squad, and you're going to stay under the luxury tax as well. You need to actually develop and draft players, and they don't have a damn soul right now, so they need to essentially start all over again with their minor league system, and that's going to take way too damn long to satisfy, as we said, Bryce Harper, because they're not even close.
Well, technically, they did start all over last year because you remember Brian Barber came in from the Yankees to run the farm system. So hopefully that's one good year. Hopefully his draft is the first of several that will work out well. So maybe the clock started reset in that regard last year, but yeah, you're absolutely right. Part of the complicated nature of this right now is you had no minor leagues this past year. You have no idea who's rising up among the system. Yeah, you sent Bryson Stott to Allentown to play with the rest of the AAA boys, but what are you going to have from somebody like him? Alec Boehm, perhaps in the same year that Stott was last year, rose up a few levels, and Stott didn't have that opportunity to do so. So you don't really know what you have and how soon. And I think that's the really hard thing here. And even making trades. If you try to make some trades and bring in some prospects, what are you trading for? I mean, you have the scouting reports from 2 years ago, and that's about it. So I just feel like this 2021 season is just going to be this really weird rebuilding year for almost all of baseball while they just try to get back on track. And the longer that they can't have fans, that could affect more of what goes on if you look at the finances of it all. So, for a lot of people, it depends on how soon we get this vaccine widely available, I suppose.
Frank Klose covering the Phillies. So they'll have Arrieta, David Robertson, Didi, Realmuto. That's $60 million coming off the luxury tax payroll. Then you can figure out what you want to do with Velazquez and I guess Neris are both guys that you can walk away from. So that opens up some doors, I guess, but you want to bring Realmuto back, I would imagine. Didi, I would be all for bringing back. Velazquez, I don't care if I ever see him pitch again. Neris, I mean, he's the best guy you got now. Do you let him walk? I don't know, but does that offer them some sort of flexibility?
It's not a lot. Especially you mentioned you'd like to see Realmuto come back. Well, if he does come back, and you're committing to $26.5 million a season to bring him back, or whatever he's going to end up getting in free agency, that money is going to get eaten up really quick. You probably have to cut Velazquez just to pay for Eflin's raise that he's going to be due. So there's a couple guys like that are kind of slipping up the system, that are going to need raises as well. So I think that number is going to be closer to 50. I think absolutely Neris, you don't non-tender him. He will be due a little bit of a raise. So yeah, the Phillies don't have a lot of room. So and looking at the Phillies team, I don't really see an obvious place to shed payroll either. I think that's one of the problems. You're not going to trade Zach Wheeler or Bryce Harper, right? They're your two recent big signees. So they're going to have to do something which is creative. And I did write this. I still think that if they miss out on Realmuto or they strategically don't re-sign him, I mean, I think it's not incumbent upon the new GM, whoever it is, to have to feel like the only way that they're successful is to re-sign Realmuto. I think they need to look at the greater picture, talk about all the issues we're talking about, and try to do the best job they can. And I think if the Phillies make the playoffs next year and the Mets don't, and Realmuto is their $28 million catcher, I don't think people will mind as much.
Hoskins' injury, how much does that change? I mean, was he the most tradable guy they had?
Yeah, he might have been, and that's the place where certainly they have some depth. You could put Boehm there. I mean, at least there is a designated hitter for next season. I think probably they're best served to try to get good use out of both Boehm and Hoskins, and they're hopefully some low-priced offense. I mean, hopefully Hoskins responds well to the surgery, And given the timeline, he's either going to be ready right before spring training, or perhaps he'll be coming in like right around the time the season's opening, and of course he would need some time for some strength build up. So that bears watching, but I definitely think that now is not the time to trade Hoskins. You don't want to trade a young player coming off Tommy John surgery, even though he's not a pitcher. It certainly does sort of detract from his value a little bit. But I agree with you. That would have been a tradable option.
Fran, I want to go around real fast. We're coming up short, so just quickly here. Kingery, is he your starting second baseman next year?
I think he has to be.
All right. You bring back Didi?
I would do that. I would prioritize bringing back Didi, yes.
All right. That means if you're keeping Hoskins, I guess you got a DH. Segura's back no matter what, so he's playing somewhere. You got one more year of McCutchen in left field. What do you do in center field? You go with Hazley Quinn again, or do you try to bring in someone to make that guy the everyday? They obviously don't think Hazley's an everyday player.
I wouldn't be opposed to giving Hazley one more shot and actually let him have the job.
You playing him? Let him hit against lefties?
I would.
All right, and we know that obviously Bryce is playing right. If you let Real Muto go, obviously Knapp, you're going to have to sign somebody, right? You're not going to play Knapp every day with somebody else playing like 30, 40 games.
You can look for a veteran like James McCann. I wouldn't overthink it. I would try to get the best veteran you can to pair with Knapp, and then just make sure you've improved another position really well. I don't know what that is or who they could trade for, but you know what? Again, this is an off season where maybe somebody's got to reduce some payroll, and maybe there's a star player at another position the Phillies could take.
A lot of pitching on the market. Bauer's at the top, James Paxton, Tanaka. Are you going to get a guy to put ahead of Nola, or are you looking for a guy to put at the back end of the rotation?
I don't think a guy exists that you could put ahead of Nola, not because Nola is the super duper ace, but I think it's because Garrett Colo is already a Yankee. Not a lot of dominant arms, but I would definitely see if there's a number 3 type to get out there. I mean, Bauer might be in that category. I would keep an eye on his market to see where he goes. I think he might end up getting a Wheeler-like deal. I don't know if they can afford it, though.
It's a shame Sixto Sanchez could have possibly been that guy.
Yeah, the Phillies felt that they had Spencer Howard, so they were covered. That was kind of the idea behind that.
Yeah.
And Spencer Howard, of course, ends the year on the injury. Well, he actually was active, but he ended the year with the injury essentially, and you kind of don't know what you have there. I think that's the problem right now.
Yeah, I know. So last but not least, I guess you say that I know last time we talked, you had Romero and Brogdon as guys you would take back. Is anybody else back from that bullpen?
You have control in Eris, yes. Non-tender Heath Hembry. I would let him go. Brandon Workman's a free agent.
Thank God.
Jose Alvarez. Yeah, Jose Alvarez, he was good when he didn't take a blow to the you-know-what. Certainly he'd be back. Keep it. Yeah, they have some.
I forgot all about that.
Yeah, he was really good. So, they need. I would definitely add 2 solid arms. Alex Colomé is a free agent. If you can get him for a deal like your David Robertson deal, I would go for Alex Colomé. But you might have to see what you get on the trade market. I mean, this is one of the ones, or be creative. I mean, try to build your own with Spencer Howard. I don't know.
All right, Frank Klose, 97.3 ESPN.com, at Frank Klose on Twitter. Follow him there for Phillies offseason news. Great conversation, man. Thanks.
Hey, good talking to you guys.
All right, as always, Frank Klose, like all guests appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline.